Welcome to a live NBA Cup Final post-game edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside from CBSSports.com. Sam Quinn is here. What's up, Sam?
John, we have an NBA champion. It's not even Christmas. It feels weird and wrong to me on some level.
What a gift from the NBA to us. The Bucks are your latest NBA Cup champions. They're hoisting the cup as we speak. They beat OKC 97-81. A lot to get into in this one. I just want to start with broad strokes here because before we came on, I saw you post on Twitter that you remain a believer in Oklahoma City. I do as well, but you remain a Bucks skeptic. I'm not, Sam. I'm in now. What's the problem here?
Okay, this is a very much a make or miss league game to me. The Thunder shot 5 of 32 from 3.
Yes,
that's not something that's going to sustain itself. Now, we can talk about some deeper offensive problems that I think the Thunder have, where I don't want to say wavering on them. I'm still going to pick them to win the West. But if you're talking about a matchup with Boston in the finals, which is what you kind of need to be looking ahead to if you're the Thunder, I do have some questions in their offense. As for the Bucks, they're still now 5-8 against teams above 500 on the season. I don't have much more of a reason to believe in the defense long term. They've been roughly league average this season so far. The perimeter hasn't really gotten better. They've just kind of been playing bad teams lately. Brook Lopez still doesn't look like Brook Lopez to me. Obviously, they'll get a boost when Chris Middleton comes back. To me, this is more of an instance of, okay, they played a young team in a big game and they missed a bunch of threes and they got visibly frustrated. You could see it, when Lou Dort got the tech in the third quarter. You could see it in Hartenstein's eyes when there was a stretch of calls they didn't get in that third quarter when things kind of started to go haywire. I just look at this more as a one-game sample of things going wrong for the other team than the Bucks are fixed now. I don't know. Do you think this tournament really materially changed things for them, or do you think this was going to happen either way?
Well, I'm gonna change your mind here because you're right that Oklahoma City absolutely had an awful shooting night. 5 3-pointers made is the lowest total for them this season. They were 5 of 32, absolutely brutal, sub 34% from the floor. They're a team that averages 116 points per game, and they only put up 81 tonight. So yes, not a great game for Oklahoma City. That's why I flush it and I say I'm not worried about them because they're good. And yes, there are some small things that I think need to be addressed. But I'd rather talk about the Bucks because they've won 13 of 16 games here, and they have crept up in. You mentioned, they've been roughly league average in defense. That's true, but they've gotten slightly better. 3-point shooting, Sam, third in 3-point percentage. I don't think they're taking enough. They coming into this game, they were only averaging They were 15th in 3-point attempts, but in 3-point shooting, this is the most shooting that Giannis has had around him, maybe ever. And they figured out, and this is something that you were a little bit of a skeptic. Last year, the Dame Giannis 2-man game was not good. This year, highest scoring duo in the NBA. Those things combined where Giannis is absolutely murdering people and he and Dame have figured out how to play together and they've got 3-point shooting. In the Eastern Conference, yeah, if you're going to tell me that the bar is the Celtics and it is the Celtics, of course, yes, I like the Celtics more. Do I like them more than the Cavs? Probably not. But I think that they're in that tier right there after the Celtics. It's anybody's game.
Yeah, pointing to the 3-point volume, the reason they fell behind early in this game, the first 6 to 8 minutes, whatever it was, it felt like really early on, Giannis was kind of forcing the issue. I'm just going to barrel my way into the paint and I'm going to make it work. And when this game flipped was when they kind of realized, oh, they're really stacking the paint. There are 4 or 5 guys here every time. Let me kick it out and let's win this game from deep. And that's what they did. The role player shooting has been so incredible for them this year between Taurean Prince, who I think is leading the NBA in 3-point percentage,
Yes.
AJ Green, who's not far behind, Gary Trent, just going down the list of the role players, they're all making threes at a rate that is they're good shooters. Don't get me wrong. I find it hard to believe that all of those guys are going to be shooting in the mid to high 40s in a playoff setting with playoff level game planning. I will give you that Damian Lillard looks a lot closer to the way he looked in Portland. He looks so much more comfortable pulling it from deep, finishing through contact. The interaction with Giannis, it's not the pick and roll that I think we envisioned. They're not spamming that same play in the way that we just assumed was going to be the case when they made the trade. But they're interacting a lot more comfortably now. It feels less your turn, my turn. There's more intermittent screening throughout a possession. There's more using one of them as a decoy to set up another. they're figuring out the ways that this makes sense within the context of their individual games, which is kind of the best that we could hope for once it became apparent that they weren't going to be like Jokic and Murray. So I'll give you the offense is more or less what we hoped it would be, or it was as good as it could be expected to be. I'm still very skeptical on the defense.
Well, here's another reason why I think you should be less skeptical. And we saw coming into tonight's game, Bill and I were talking about it on Beyond the Arc pod earlier today, where we were saying, okay, who's guarding Giannis? Now that's a problem for everybody league wide. You can pick out anybody and say who's guarding Giannis, and it's going to be an issue. But it's specifically an issue for the Thunder, because the Thunder, the one knock against them once they got Isaiah Hartenstein, he addresses a little bit of this. He's a rebounding monster and he's a big guy, but absent him, you got a bunch of guys in that like 6'4" to 6'8" range, right? And you saw how much the Bucks size gave them problems tonight. Giannis, yes, he's a monster, but also Brook Lopez, his size, Taurean Prince, they're a bigger team. And I think like that behooves them well. You couple that with the shooting and then Dame starting to figure out that like, oh yeah, I'm Dame again. All I'm saying is this isn't the version of the Bucks we saw at the beginning of the season where everybody was freaking out.
We should note that the Thunder do have somebody pretty well equipped to guard Giannis. He just wasn't playing. His name's Chet Holmgren.
Fair enough.
But you're right, John. You're absolutely right. Like there was a stretch,
but his thickness
quarter.
too. I mean, Chet. I want to see Chet. Like, okay, Giannis was dribbling into 4 defenders in the paint and still bodying dudes. That Chet's not going to solve that.
There was a stretch in the third quarter where they put Alex Caruso on him, and like you could tell Giannis saw that.
Yes,
like he had dollar signs in his eyes. Now, Alex Caruso has guarded Giannis in the past. This isn't like Dagnall getting desperate. Billy Donovan used to do it all the time. It's still a mismatch. He's still 6 inches shorter and however many dozens of pounds lighter. So, yeah, you're right. Like, I think a big thing we saw in this game, too, was just the Thunder are playing a lot of guys now that they're not going to play when it actually counts. I think I've had my fill of the A.J. Mitchell experience. I think Kenrich Williams, like, maybe we're ready to put him out to pasture here as a rotation player. Like, I think there were just too many guys on the floor that were exploitable in the context of, oh, Giannis is unstoppable and we're just putting all of these guys on the floor. If you're not contributing something significant on offense or helping in some other way on defense, I don't know what you're really bringing to the table here. That was a big issue for me. I felt like the Thunder used a few guys who I just would not have put in this game.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think that's fair. I looked at it more as, this was going to be a matchup problem. It's a matchup problem for everybody, but it was just like Giannis really going takeover mode in this one. And we've seen a lot of it this season, right? Where he has played at an MVP caliber level. And I keep saying the Joker's numbers are so ridiculous that they can't be denied, but Giannis is starting to put his hand up and be like, have you seen my numbers? They're so ridiculous. They really can't be denied. Now, free throw shooting is still an issue, but man, there's nobody anywhere who can stop that guy.
He's suffering from a real case of Kevin Durant syndrome right now, where poor Kevin Durant was so good for so many years and nobody noticed when LeBron was being LeBron, where like, look, I'm sorry, Giannis, like Jokic is so incredible that we do tend to overlook you, but just because you're not better than Jokic does not mean that you're not absolutely incredible. And like, this is probably offensively the best that he's ever been, right? Like, I think defensively, he's not quite where he'd been in the past, but when you factor in the mid-range stuff that he's added this year, and he's not a playmaker in the way that Jokic is. I think the thing with Jokic and with LeBron and the absolute upper echelon of playmakers is they unlock the entire floor from a passing perspective. Something you notice a lot with Giannis as a passer is he gets a lot of the, like, I'm not even going to say the easy reads, but it's a lot of stuff where it's like the guy is like straight line in front of him or perpendicular, like close enough that like you have half of the floor locked down. And if there's anything remotely viable there, he's going to create it. Whereas Jokic is like, oh, I could have my back turned and there's a guy in the corner and that's still a viable shot for me. So yeah, he's not quite at that level that Jokic is, but he's better than anybody else on offense right now. There was obviously a lot of debate between him and Luka for number 2 in the NBA. So far this season, it's been Giannis with a bullet.
So far, it's been Giannis. Luka's coming on hot, but yes, it's been Giannis if we're talking about the season writ large. I want to thank everybody who's joining us live on YouTube. You can find us on YouTube at Beyond the Arc CBS. Hit the like button. Leave us a comment. If you're joining the show live right now, we'll throw up some comments. You can subscribe as well to the show. And if you hit the little bell symbol, you'll get notified when we go live. We're live most days, Monday through Friday, noon Eastern. And then for specific special events like tonight, we like to go live right after the game for post-game reaction. Producer Aaron, throw up that comment from Michael, who has some questions about the Thunder here. Question from Michael Costa for you guys. Do you think the Thunder will be able to come through in these big games against above average teams? Go ahead.
So something that I have been thinking about with the Thunder, dating back to the Dallas series last year, is that as good as their offense is at its best, I don't want to say one-dimensional, but they're very much focused on a specific approach, which is SGA gets to his spots, and he gets to his spots better than anybody in the NBA. But once he's there, the whole goal is we're going to kick it around to just make these wide open, like layup line threes. And last year, they were number one in the NBA in three-point percentage, and this year they're down to like 19th, where SGA isn't making threes at the level he was last year. And Caruso isn't close to the level that he was last year. And if you just go up and down that roster, everybody's just a few percentage points lower. And over a full game, that really adds up. And what you saw even in the Houston game was in the first half, that offense was not looking great. And they got bailed out in the second half because the three started going in. In this game, they didn't go in. And what happened was they didn't have an alternate. There's no other win condition for the Thunder on offense right now besides SGA into open threes. And that's a big problem when you're talking about these other contenders where, like, okay, look at the Bucks, for example. They have the obvious, oh, we're going to start with Giannis kills you in the paint. That doesn't work. Dame's going to do his thing. That doesn't work. Like, okay, cool. We can kick it into Brook Lopez for 4 or 5 possessions in a row, and he can still do some stuff in the paint in small doses. We have these role players who are shooting at, like, Splash Brother level threes from deep. You have all of these different ways that you can attack a good defense. The Thunder are really heavily reliant on the one. Maybe getting Chet back is helpful. Maybe Jalen Williams has another level to go to over the course of the season. Jalen Williams, to me, is more of a finisher than a creator. They really lack a secondary creator right now, and that's going to be a problem deep in the playoffs.
Yeah, they do lack a secondary creator. I'm less concerned about I was going to say the two issues that I was going to tweak with, and keep in mind, they're still the best team in the Western Conference so far this season. So we are kind of nitpicking a little bit here, but size has been an issue. And then the other thing was more consistent 3-point shooting. I tend to think that in the same way that you were saying with the Bucks role players shooting the lights out, that maybe there might be a little bit of a regression to the mean. Those open looks that SGA generates, eventually those things are going to start falling. So I think that they're going to be fine there. But tonight they weren't fine. I mean, when SGA scores just 21 points on 8 of 24 shooting, you're going to have a problem. That Houston game that you mentioned, that was really a good example, right? Where in the first half, they didn't score the ball. He didn't play well. And in the second half, they didn't panic. They played great, and they won that thing going away. Tonight, they didn't panic. It just didn't work out for them. By the way, SGA came into this game having scored 25 or more in 15 straight games. He was due for one to like really not do that. Here's another comment from Theo Anderson. There are people who think, or at least thought, that SGA is more valuable than Giannis. Look, there's a group
right.
Well, I have said repeatedly, and maybe tonight changes it a little bit for me, but I've said repeatedly that Joker is kind of undeniable as like the best player in the NBA. And then there's 3 other guys after him in the MVP race, SGA and Luka and Jason Tatum. And then whoever the 5th guy is, you can have it. But I think like I would put SGA and Giannis. Sorry, and Giannis.
There, I was getting a little concerned.
Yeah, Giannis and SGA and Luka, and then you could have whoever you want as the 5th guy. But like Giannis and SGA are both extremely good. And if you want to tell me that Giannis is like leaps and bounds better than SGA, I don't know that I'd go that far.
I'd put him like half a tier ahead of him. Like to me, it's Jokic is in a tier, Giannis and Luka are in a tier, and then like half a tier below them are SGA and Tatum and healthy Embiid. Although healthy Embiid at this point is kind of a fiction.
Yeah, you could forget that.
I feel pretty firmly at this point that Giannis would be number 2 on MVP if I were to submit a ballot
I do
today.
too.
And it would be more of a like, in a normal year, you win MVP with these numbers sort of thing. It's just that, Jokic is second in points, rebounds, and assists. Like,
it's ridiculous.
How?
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
sorry. We shouldn't turn. Today should be about Giannis. It shouldn't be a Jokic chasm.
it
Like,
should absolutely be
it's
about
just-
Giannis, and it deserves to be because I mean, in addition to having a 26-point triple double, like when you bore down on those numbers there, Sam, 19 rebounds. I mean, he just was like all over the glass. Like he was a man. And this is an Oklahoma City Thunder team that has had problems previously in rebounding, but really tonight it was glaring where Giannis was like, I'm going to dominate you guys. And it really showed. So kudos to the Milwaukee Bucks for being the NBA Cup champions this season. We're going to take a quick break. On the other side, I want to talk to you a little bit about the cup itself, the format, what we think about it. There was some varying returns on, Bill Reiter was at the game tonight and we were texting back and forth about like the vibes and the energy and whatnot. So we'll get into that on the other side. This is a live NBA Cup final edition of Beyond the Arc on YouTube. We'll be right back.
Baby, we are gonna start a fire.
From world-renowned clubs
Simply devastating.
to worldwide stars,
Wrexham have done it. This incredible ride continues.
the English Football League on CBS Sports Network, and stream every match live on Paramount Plus.
All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. Just a reminder, you can also get us wherever you find your favorite podcast. Please download, subscribe, and leave a review. And then on Spotify, below the play button in full screen mode, you could leave us comments and questions on the show. All right, the NBA Cup itself, Sam. Do you feel any differently about the importance? The Bucks got the cup. They're going to hoist a banner. Any differently, any more importance than you did maybe last year?
No, it feels less than it did last year. Last
Really?
year felt like it was something, and maybe that's just because LeBron was there and that made it feel like LeBron's stamp of approval makes it feel a little bit more legitimate. And meanwhile, on the other side, it felt like it was a moment for Halliburton where he wasn't really like a public figure, like a public player before, but as it happened, his profile really rose. And you can say to an extent that sort of happened for teams like Houston and Atlanta, I think really did benefit from this experience. But I came into this game tonight and it just sort of felt like any other game. If anything, it felt a little bit less like a normal game just because it doesn't count. Like, it's not something in the standings. It's not something that we're really going to point to as any sort of legacy definer. And like, you could hear it watching the games. Like, there was no real energy in the crowd. It didn't feel like the people in the building were all that excited about it. So I don't know. To me, it just kind of felt like something that's there. I didn't gain all that much out of it.
So
I think in its present form, it just doesn't do much for me.
I got a couple of questions about this because we were texting, producer Aaron and I were texting with Bill, who's there, Bill Reiter, our NBA insider. And he was saying, hey, it's getting loud here. Does it sound any different? And I wonder if it was just like a TV acoustics thing. Cause I responded, no, it sounds like the crowd is completely dead. And he was saying in the arena, it sounded like, there was actually some life to it. So maybe it's like a broadcast issue. But the other question here is, you mentioned Houston and Atlanta getting to Vegas and how that was a good thing for those franchises and those teams. Bill had reported that the NBA wasn't exactly thrilled that they missed out, not surprisingly, on the Knicks and Golden State and Steph. And my whole thing is, well, if it's just about big markets and big stars, then you've got a bigger problem than just the NBA Cup, because Oklahoma City isn't going anywhere for a long time. And Milwaukee's got Giannis, as we saw. And like, if some of these marquee teams that are in smaller markets is a problem for you to market your product, then I don't know what that solve is. Is maybe Vegas isn't the right setting for this thing if you're worried about, fans not traveling and there not being an atmosphere.
Yeah, and after Oklahoma City's inevitable run of titles, we're gonna have San Antonio after that. Like, if you are a person who believes that the NBA is heavily reliant on market, the next 7 to 10 years are probably not going to be super kind. So it's very much incumbent on the NBA to use this period now while you still have LeBron and Curry and Durant to like bring in fans of those guys and show them, hey, actually the league is in good hands after them. Oklahoma City's really cool. Houston is ascending. Atlanta is ascending. This in-season tournament event, NBA Cup, whatever they end up calling it, like, this should be the marquee event for the teams that don't get the other marquee events, right? We know Atlanta is not going to be playing in the Eastern Conference Finals again. But if you as a league are going to succeed, you do need people to watch Atlanta on a random Tuesday night against Detroit or whoever. So seeing them put on a good show against Milwaukee, beat the Knicks at MSG, that should be meaningful to the NBA. That should be you as a league. your opportunity to say, like, it's not just LeBron, it's not just Curry. We have really cool, interesting teams from everywhere. And if that's not the response, then we do have some real problems here.
Well, it should be, right? Because conceptually, I do like the idea of the NBA Cup for all the reasons that you just outlined. It should be a big, momentous occasion. We're on a Tuesday night. Milwaukee's playing Oklahoma City for some hardware. And hey, by the way, just because they're small markets, put that aside for a second. You've got two incredible superstars who are MVP contenders in Giannis and SGA. There has been a lot of hand-wringing about the NBA ratings being down. Now, Adam Silver addressed that today, and he said, well, look, cable ratings across the board are down double digits. And if you actually look at our ratings aren't down nearly as badly as cable writ large. And also, he pointed out that so in terms of social media attention, the NBA gets more traction on social media than any other league. So he actually thinks it's in a pretty healthy spot. I don't know how much I believe that. I think they're trying to spin it a little bit here. I will say that the Vegas component, initially I loved it. And now I'm wondering, like, getting fans to travel for their teams to Vegas on a Tuesday night, are you asking too much? And then if you're not getting like hardcore fans of the Bucks and the Thunder to travel for the championship, who's filling the arena? Bill was saying that he was talking to people and there were $40 tickets available, which didn't really augur all that well for the game.
Well, if you're going to do Vegas, and I'm not saying we have to throw Vegas out, but if you're going to do Vegas, it can't be a Tuesday. Like, that's a non-starter. People
Right.
are not going to, because then if you think about it logistically, it's a late night and you're on the West Coast. You're not flying back to home on Wednesday, missing 3 days of work, and then the next week is Christmas, so you're missing time from work, you're traveling as well. It has to be a Friday and a Sunday, I think, for
Yes,
it to
Friday
make
and
sense in
Sunday
Vegas.
makes sense.
But the NBA is pathologically afraid of the NFL. So if you're going to do that, then you have to move it after football season. But after football season, you also have All-Star, and that messes up your kind of schedule clustering, where the way it's set up now, the first third of the season is like the intro to NBA Cup phase, and then you have the All-Star trade deadline phase, and then you have the playoff push phase. You have to kind of throw that out the window if you're going to do an NBA Cup that ends with, a Friday and a Sunday after football ends. Maybe, and I think I've suggested this on this show, what you do is you combine it with All-Star Weekend, and you maybe have, like, instead of an All-Star game, or you do the All-Star game Saturday, and then you do the Cup final Sunday, something like that. I don't know, something in that vein. But you can't expect fans to travel for a Tuesday game, especially when they don't know that their team is going to be in it until
Right.
late Saturday night. And even they don't know that their team's going to be in the quarterfinals until the Tuesday or Wednesday before. It's just not feasible on a Tuesday. It has to be a Friday and a Sunday if it's going to be Vegas.
Friday and a Sunday would work, even a Thursday and a Saturday. But once Amazon flips on the NBA lights, they might take it out of our hands, because we've already heard from various reports saying that Amazon was thinking about pushing the NBA Cup back into that window where there would be more NBA things happening. So it could get a little clunky. However, they want to move it till after the NFL season, because Amazon also has Thursday night football. We got another question here from Michael Costa, cousin John. Oh, my cousin Michael. All right. What do you think about the new All-Star game format? Personally, I feel like they should go back to the traditional East versus West. Yeah, that's actually something that we're going to talk about on Thursday's show. I believe, Sam, are you joining me on Thursday's show?
I think.
All right.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the new All-Star game format on Thursday. I'll tell you who hates it, though, real quickly. Kevin Durant sounded off on it today, so we'll have sound from Kevin Durant later on. Just one more thing here about the NBA Cup before we wrap this up, Sam. You were talking about how it's an 83rd game, right? Some people, I think, don't quite know, or maybe have forgotten that it's an 83rd game, and all these stats just get wiped out. So that 26-point, 19 rebound, 10 assist effort that Giannis just had, poof, into the ether, which is also something I'd like to see them fix, because it's like part of the fun of the NBA is, these streaks and these stats, and none of this counts. It's just like a thing that happened, and then they have a cup and everybody forgets about it.
We have that same problem with the play-in, where nobody's keeping track, and it's not a regular season stat and it's not a playoff stat, but they don't also have a third category for play-in. It makes very little sense to me. But as far as the 83rd game thing goes, it is ridiculous to me that they have not found any way whatsoever for it to count. Like, I think the very obvious thing to do is count the win for the winning team, but don't count the loss for the losing team. That way you can at least give the winning team something of an advantage from a playoff perspective, where it's like, oh, the Bucks won 49 games and the Knicks won 49 games, but the Bucks automatically have the tiebreaker because they also won the cup. Or you can just call it a universal tiebreaker if you don't want to like throw off Vegas from an over-under perspective. Like, I don't like there needs to be some advantage because the Milwaukee Bucks won a game tonight. That has to count for something. Otherwise, why are we even playing it? You're just
against a
playing
very good team. Against a very good team. And yes,
that might be their most impressive win of the entire season. In fact, like, they haven't beaten Boston yet. Like, they came relatively close recently. If they don't beat Boston, this will probably be the best win of their entire regular season. And it's fictional as far as the record books go.
Yeah. And as producer Aaron points out, it's a game where, you know, they're playing for $500,000 per player for the winning team, and the losing team gets $200,000. So there are some stakes here, but in terms of the record books, in terms of the standings, none of this counts. And what would happen if all of a sudden SGA or Giannis or Dame get hurt in a game that doesn't quite matter for the regular season standings? Even the Bucks and the Thunder would lose their minds. And by the way, if that happened, all of a sudden teams are going to start rethinking this thing, right? Like the whole point here is that the NBA needs to do some tinkering. I like it. I like it on the whole. I still think it's a good idea. They just need to do some adjustments.
Yeah, I think it's going to feel a lot more legitimate when we get to 32 teams and this is single elimination. I think the NBA is using this period now to work out the kinks, see what works. But honestly, like, this isn't a tournament at this stage. It doesn't feel like a tournament if it's like, oh, the Cavs and the Hawks are playing on Tuesday and this is a cup game, but then they're playing again on Thursday and it's not a cup game. But then the Hawks play again on Friday against the Wizards, and that is a cup game. Like, for it to feel like a tournament, there can't be other non-tournament games cluttering the schedule with it, right? Like, it has to be like, okay, we're starting now, and every game until the championship is part of this separate event.
I'll say that despite the fact that it has some kinks to work out, I actually give the NBA credit for even trying something like this and then continuing to adjust, right? Where they go, because it would be very, very easy for Adam Silver to be like, it's fine, we don't need to change anything. And instead they've acknowledged, hey, like, you know, some of these early regular season games, we'd like to get some more attention. Wouldn't this be good? We've seen it work in soccer and other sports where these extra cup games or extra hardware gets more attention. And then the All-Star game, they continue to tinker with that. And again, we're going to discuss that on Thursday's show. But I like that they're trying new things instead of just throwing up their hands and saying, it's always been this way and we're not going to change anything.
Oh, John, I completely agree. I think that is, if you're eventually, I mean, Adam Silver's still going to be the commissioner for some significant period of time. When we eventually look back on Adam Silver's tenure, the main positive I think we're going to take from it is that he was a lot more willing to get weird than David Stern was. There are pros and cons to that. And like, a lot of the cons will be things people talk about in Adam Silver's legacy as well. But he's willing to try stuff to varying degrees of success. The play-in has been a smash hit. Like, that was, I think, a no-brainer. The moment they tried it, they landed on it. That first year was really good. And then it was just clear this is staying forever. The in-season tournament, the cup, is going to require some tinkering, and they don't have the right number of teams to do it properly yet. But I think in 5 years, we're going to find ourselves saying, like, this doesn't mean as much as the championship in June, but it's fun. It's a secondary thing to root for. It feels distinct. Now, as far as it feeling distinct goes, one change I think they really do need to make for next year, the colorful courts have to go. I'm sorry. I'm done. No more blood red courts.
Give me different courts, but make them aesthetically pleasing instead of something that like is burning my retina. I think this is a pretty universal idea that everybody would get behind. The city edition stuff is awesome. There's some really cool looking gear and courts that they put out there this year. Do that. You already figured out that you like alternate uniforms and alternate courts. Just make them less gaudy, please.
Maybe just use the in-season tournament or the cup for the city edition, right? Like, just say for these 2 weeks, this is what you're wearing. And like, then fans can at least associate it and be like, oh, those are the in-season tournament jerseys. And then if your team wins the in-season tournament, you're inclined to go buy that jersey. My big problem with the city edition and the alternates and the throwbacks is that now teams are wearing way too many jerseys. You turn on a game and you don't immediately know who you're watching. I think it really hurts the league's brand identity. So if you're going to continue doing that, which I'd rather you didn't, but if you're going to, at least associate one of these jerseys with a specific point in time so the fans kind of know, like, oh, the reason we're wearing this is because of this. And if I want to go out and buy this jersey, it's because I feel like I liked watching us in the in-season tournament. I'm buying a slice of nostalgia, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, a counterpoint to that is I like merch and cool merch, so I'm all for these alternate jerseys that are good, but the courts are bad. But I applaud the NBA for tinkering. And to your point about the play-in being good and never going anywhere, there was initial pushback on the play-in. Some people, the traditionalists, were like, "This is not for me," and now everybody universally is like, "This is a great idea. Way to go, NBA, and way to go, Adam Silver." That's going to, and way to go, Sam Quinn. Thank you for joining me tonight because Bill is off doing stuff, and you're going to join me again on Thursday when we come back because there's no NBA on Wednesday. They decided to take a day off. Still not sure why they're doing that, but they will be back on Thursday. We're going to be back on Thursday. We will be live on YouTube at noon Eastern. You can find us at Beyond the Arc CBS, so come and join us. But for now, for Sam Quinn, go read all his stuff at cbssports.com. I'm John Gonzalez. We thank you so much for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you on Thursday.